Welcome to this week's episode of Community Conversations. This podcast is for people who are passionate about the community services sector and helping to reach people doing it tough. There are times when each one of us can struggle with life, and through these podcasts, we hope you're encouraged to overcome life's obstacles and help others. I am Pietro Di Girolamo, and on today's program, we have John Wolfenden and Maureen Dunn. Welcome to Community Conversations, and thank you for helping those doing it tough in the recent bushfires. John and Maureen are chaplains, and they have been up close and seen the human side of this national tragedy. Today, we will hear from their own personal experiences being on the front line at emergency evacuation centres. John and Maureen, welcome to our program. Would you mind telling our audience a little bit about yourselves? Let's start with you, John.
Yes, well, I've been in church life nearly all my life, and always interested in the community. That's been a part of my call or vision, or what you may want to call it. Even in my teenage years, I was very much involved in youth work and state work, etc. And with the chaplaincy, I guess about 15 or so years ago with Chaplaincy Australia, I did the chaplaincy course and became a chaplain with them, and then later on chaplain with DRCN, which is Disaster Relief Chaplaincy Network, which is the group that are called upon in any state disaster. But that's for me, and I'm for it, and I'm delighted to be involved in it.
And what about you, Maureen? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm a mum of 3 adult children. They've all grown up and have their own lives now, and I've got 4 beautiful grandchildren. I work as a chaplain in a local high school in Raymond Terrace, and I'm a part of New Life Church in Raymond Terrace.
With the recent bushfire devastations that we have seen, obviously, on our television sets, can each of you tell us what you think people are going through at the moment?
There are 3 things to look at in this. One is those who are actually in the bushfires, those who are not in but have seen the bushfires, and those who were not in and haven't seen but know somebody who was. So they're the 3 categories that I work on when I'm doing chaplaincy work on the front line. And that helps me a lot to how to handle the people who I'm talking to and sharing with and trying to assist and help.
And what about you, Maureen? What's been your experience on the front lines?
Well, what I've noticed when I've been at the evacuation centre, people have come with different emotions. Some people have had to leave like their horses and their animals at home, so they're quite distressed and traumatised whether their animals are going to be okay. I met some wives that their husbands stayed home to fight the fires and protect their home, so they were quite concerned about their husbands. Other people just felt quite a relief and quite supported to be at the centre.
What I'd really like to know, John, is your own personal experience. What did you actually do when you were deployed as a chaplain in some of these centres? Maybe you can tell us a bit more about where you were deployed and what you actually did while you were there.
Yes, I was in about 5 or 6 different evac centres in New South Wales, as high up as Glen Innes and the Taree and Kempsey, etc. And they're all different. You can't stereotype the people who will come in and the amount of people who may come in. One occasion, one centre, we had 300 people there and 2 chaplains. So you're spread fairly thin. And not only do you get involved in the safety and security and comfort and well-being, but you get involved in other tasks as well, such as we helped lay down all the beds for 300 people and get the blankets, etc. So you don't always stick to your channel vision, so to speak. You become part of a team, and there's always a team there of various different people, Red Cross, Disaster Relief, Salvation Army, Samaritans, etc. And you form a big team and you work as a team. But I would have to say you can't divorce yourself from what you see and what you feel and what you touch and what you hear. It does touch your emotions, but you have to be in control. And that's a part of our job. That's how we're trained. And you do your professional work, and if you want to shed a tear later on, well, you go for a walk on your own. But at that situation, you do your job, you're a professional.
Maureen, what would you like to add to that? Obviously, you're a mother and you're a grandmother. You've mentioned that before. What was your experience talking to families that had lost everything?
Yeah, as chaplains in the evacuation centre, we're there to bring support and comfort when people are traumatised. There was a number of times the manager of the centre would come and pull me out to come and talk to an individual that was upset. One lady I think of that came, she had her dogs with her and they couldn't come into the centre because they weren't social with other dogs, and there was dogs and cats and there was a snake, there was birds, there was all sorts of animals in the centre that we were at for a few days. And so this lady came, and because her dogs weren't social, she couldn't bring them inside, so she was quite upset. So the manager came and asked me to come out because the lady was outside in tears walking back to her car. So I said, well, let's try and find somewhere we can put your dogs. So we walk around the back and we tied them up in some shade, gave them some water down there, and then I took her inside and just sat with her while she had something to eat, because they supply meals. I think it was the Salvation Army that do all the meals. So I just sat with her while she ate. So just so she wasn't on her own going through that stressful time, I sat with her so she had a meal, and then she was just able to calm down, and then she actually got a text from someone that offered her to go and stay at their house. So that was great to be in between and be able to help out that lady. So we have a lot of things like that happen for the chaplains, where we can just get beside that one person that just needs that bit of calm and comfort and not feel like they're on their own, not knowing what to do. Another story is a man that came up to me and said, "You're a chaplain?" I said, "Yes." He said, "So do you pray for people?" I said, "Yes, if you'd like me to. Would you like me to pray?" And he said, "Yes, please." I said, "What would you like me to pray for?" He said, "I want you to pray for my cattle, that if the fire jumps the road, that they go down to the creek." So that was quite heart-wrenching. I could see the stress on him, that he was concerned for his cattle. So we prayed, and then he said, "Thank you, that was a good prayer. Please continue to pray for rain."
That's a really good. They're very good stories that you've just shared with us, Maureen. John, have you got any stories yourself of the people that you met at the evacuation centres?
One particular guy was sitting on his own in one of the evac centres, and it was pointed out to me that he was pretty grumpy and unhappy, and he was sitting on his own away from the rest of the group. So went over and pulled up a chair and just said, "How you doing, pal? How's things?" And we got talking. And he said, "Mate, all I want to do is clean my teeth and wash my face." He said, "I'll be right." I said, "Mate, we can help you with that. That's not a drama." So I took him over to where there was some chemist items that had been donated, and got him a toothbrush and some toothpaste, and said, "Now, mate, go down those stairs, and the men's toilets are down there, wash basins and everything." So away he went, come back up. He was happy. He was happy. He was only grumpy because he hadn't cleaned his teeth and washed his face, which is a bit funny in a sense, but it's not funny at all, but you know what I mean. Another fellow walked in and he had a pair of shorts on and no shoes and no shirt. And he said, "All I want is a shirt." We don't know his story, but obviously he must have been affected by the bushfires not to have a shirt to put on. So they found a shirt for him, and they found some thongs as well. And away he went. He said, "I'm fine, I'm happy, I don't want anything else, just want a shirt." So you don't know the story behind the stories, but they're all there. And I've even played cards with a small group of people and told a few jokes and got them laughing. And when they're laughing, well, I just move on. That's my job done in that. So you virtually just keep your eyes open, see who looks sad, go up to them, talk to them, sit down with them, try and get them relaxed, and someone cares, and that's important to, and that's the role of a chaplain, to do that sort of stuff.
You both talked about the evacuation centres. Can you describe for us, those of us that haven't been to the evacuation centre, what do they look like? Is there some kind of process of people that are coming in, like the gentleman there with the shorts and no shirt? Is there some sort of process that takes place when people come to these evacuation centres? And just give us an overview of how many donations and all that kind of thing, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, the Family and Community Services, which is FACS, run the centre. They head it up with a centre manager, and they have a table at the front. So when you first walk in, there's a desk where you register, and they get your information, and they put you onto the services that you're needing. They've got the Salvation Army is there, Samaritans are there, Red Cross is there. Every need you could possibly want, from nappies to clothing to bedding. In the Taree one, on one end of the room where there was mattresses just everywhere during the day. They're all stacked up, and then as evening comes they put them down. And then in the middle of the room there's lots of tables and chairs where everyone's sitting. Like, it's a big community atmosphere there. And then there's the outside where the smokers go, or because it's not really fresh air outside because it was so full of smoke. But some people that go outside throughout the day. And it's a real community atmosphere. And out in the car park even, there's a lot of cars, and a lot of people choose to sleep in their cars, and they know it's a safe place, so they'll drive their cars to the evacuation site and sleep in the car. We had community, one morning actually I went out to the car park to tell them breakfast had been cooked if they wanted to come in, and they started telling me stories about locals in the area that had driven the night before with stacks and stacks of boxes of pizza and so many bottles and crates of water, just handing them out to everyone that was out. So it was just amazing, just the community support and love that generates in a time of crisis.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. What you both are doing. How do you prepare for deployment out in the field? I don't know. Is it a paid role? Is it voluntary? How does it work?
With DRCN, it's a voluntary role. And probably my answer to that question is it's too late to prepare at that time. You need to be prepared well in advance, if years in advance, and studying and doing courses so that you are fully equipped when the call comes for deployment. You're ready. It doesn't matter where it is or where you go. You take with you your knowledge and your competency, your talents, your abilities, and away you go. What
impact do you think these fires are having on people now that the television crews have moved on and people are just starting to see, I guess, what's around them, what's left?
Well, I hope that we don't forget the crisis that we're been through and to some degree still in, because the after effects of what has happened here in Australia will go on for a long period of time. And even some may not emotionally recover from the trauma they've been through. It's a very personalised situation. And the trauma, I guess, is proportional to the amount of loss that they've experienced. So it's really a mixed bag, but there's a lot of work to be done now. Most of the fires are over, and probably for the next 2 years or so, there's a great need to follow up in the trauma and the counselling area and grief and loss. And it's just the same as if somebody passed away and died. It has a similar effect upon the emotions of people.
John and Maureen, before we let you go, is there anything that you would like to share with our listening audience in regards to the role of chaplaincy in Australia? For example, do we have enough chaplains on the ground at the moment, or do we need more?
The role of a chaplain varies considerably, and we can talk about DRCN because that's where we're involved. They do at times struggle for chaplains, even though there's, I understand, about 300 registered, but most are in employment and they can't get away. Weekends they've got too many, during the week they don't have enough. Training chaplains in strategic areas in New South Wales, I think, is a plan that they're trying to work on. We basically cover from Gosford to the border, with a couple of exceptions. Sydney covers to the border in Victoria and across to Canberra. But even when I was in Glen Innes, they flew 2 up from Canberra because we were short of chaplains. So it's training chaplains, but in strategic areas in New South Wales so they can respond. But definitely more chaplains, absolutely.
Over to you, Maureen. Obviously, you mentioned before in the introduction that you're a chaplain in a school. Yeah. How does that role differ to the one that you had in deployment with the fires recently?
Yeah, so my role in the high school as a chaplain is to support the students in whatever capacity that may mean, socially, spiritually, emotionally. So for me to come into chaplaincy, I actually started off, my children were in high school, and I started volunteering in the canteen at the high school. So from there, I started to get to know the kids in the high school and the youth, and I just got a real heart and saw the brokenness in the kids. And then I got to know the chaplain in the high school. And by talking to him and watching what he did in the high school, I just had a real heart to go into that. And that's why I then went into looking to be a chaplain. So in our training to be a chaplain, we do a lot on grief and loss and suicide prevention and a lot of the issues that face young people and the whole community actually. And so when we do the disaster relief, that's then another 2 days of training to go into that as well. So in the high school, I've ran some groups with grief and loss, children that have gone through that. And the good thing about those groups is the kids that do it, they realise that they're not the only one going through those kind of, when they've had a death of a parent or a loved one, they realise they're not the only one going through that, but there's others that then brings a bond in and then helps them realise that they're normal and that they support each other in those groups as well.
So Maureen, if the chaplain wasn't there, as you're saying, if the chaplain wasn't at the school, who would actually provide the services to the students? And why do students feel a lot more comfortable speaking to a chaplain as opposed to other teachers or other professionals within the education system?
Well, my role as a chaplain in the school, I'm in between like the God person and the counsellor. I'm not there to counsel people and I'm not there to speak about God to people. I'm there to support the students in what way they need support. I've had students come up to me and say, can I speak to you? I've seen you speaking to my friend and you seem really nice. So it's just being that friendly person, because sometimes they do go through issues where they don't want to talk to their friends and or a teacher. And I'm just that person that they can confide in and it's confidential.
So I'm just wondering, for those of us that don't know, how did chaplaincy get started? Has it been around for a while? Is it just a new thing that's happened recently? John, would you like to just give us a bit of an overview on chaplaincy in this country and from your perspective?
Well, Chaplaincy Australia was birthed by a lady called Anne Giuliano, and she had this vision to create a national identity for chaplains. With our denomination, we didn't have any such thing, and so she birthed the Chaplaincy Australia. Training is a theological type of training as well as practical training. I think it's a 12 months or 2-year course, which is accredited with the Australian education system. And that started about 15, 18 years ago. And it's just grown and grown and grown and grown since. And there are quite a number of registered chaplains for Chaplaincy Australia. And quite a lot of those have also registered and done the course with DRCN. And so they fulfill roles in both areas, DRCN as well as Chaplaincy Australia. Chaplaincy Australia do a lot of hospitals, ambulance chaplaincy, police chaplaincy, all that sort of thing, St John's Ambulance, and it's and all of those, and they're mainly all voluntary too. They're not paid roles, they're voluntary roles, and people get into chaplaincy because that's where their heart is. That's what they want to do. It's not a chore. It's not difficult. It wouldn't matter if you were called out 3 times a week or 3 times a month, or you're away for a fortnight. That's where your heart is. It's in the community, and that's why we do what we do, because that's what we love.
So can anyone become a chaplain, Maureen?
You can be of any faith to be a chaplain. It's not just for Christians, but you do need to be in some sort of a faith.
You also need to have a letter of recommendation from whichever religious body you're with. For instance, I was in some chaplaincy training and there was an Islamic guy there who was trained to be a chaplain. So it's not linked to any particular denomination. It's right across the board, and for various reasons, because each chaplaincy role title can change what you do and what you're allowed to do. So it's really a vast area, and one that is very much needed in the community, and people feel safe with chaplains.
So how do people normally approach a chaplain if they've never actually had a conversation with one before?
Most people seem to warm to chaplains who have got grey hair on their head, that they feel comfortable with that person who's been through life experiences, etc. That's not saying that young people can't be chaplains, definitely not. They certainly can be, and we need them. We need young chaplains, especially if there's a lot of teenagers and young people around. So the mix is there. But a lot of people in mature age would go to someone with grey hair because they relate to that age group.
We also wear the vests which have chaplain written on it, so it's quite clear who the chaplains are.
Yeah.
Especially in the situations with the disaster, they know who we are, they know who to come to.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for being on our program today on Community Conversations. We want to thank you for tuning into our podcast on Community Conversations. If there's anything today that has caused you distress, please contact Lifeline on 131114 or reach out to Chaplaincy Australia through their various websites. If you'd like further information about our podcast, please contact us through this channel. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and remember, be kind to each other.